Hey, it's Shabes, and this is a new series called Anitube Digest, which I've been wanting to make for a long time, about reviewing and talking about the anime YouTube that has been coming out the past week, in this case between August 25th, last Sunday, and today, which is August 31st. The rest of the rules and how I choose what I choose is down in the description, as well as a playlist to all these videos. So this isn't going to be too negative necessarily, but I do want to talk about the videos that I thought were not good, not great. Like I would rethink that. And the first one, surprise, surprise, is an explanation point video. So he goes over 26 shows that aired in summer 2019. He says he doesn't include sequels, spin-offs, and porn, but that implies you didn't watch all of summer 2019, so why are you trying to watch all of summer 2019? There's several entries on this list that he clearly doesn't care about, clearly wouldn't have watched otherwise, but he still watched the first episode, or he says he did. Some of them he says he only watched 10 minutes of before shutting it off, but he still writes like 30 seconds about it. It's like, why say anything if you have nothing to say about it? One of the shows he talks about, Magical Senpai, I can imagine him not liking this show. I can imagine myself not liking this show. Whatever you're saying here is probably true. But he writes, not worth your time to watch, not worth my time to write about. And so why are you putting it in that at all? That's like 30 seconds of your video, and you probably worked on that for like 20 minutes or a half hour. Like, you wasted more time talking about it. I'm not saying if you have nothing good to say, don't say it. That's fine. But please be kind of constructive and give a genuinely decent reason. What he says about Nanbaru Kiru desu ka, this show is trash that's trying to be trash. You are going to die someday, and when you do, you're going to regret spending 24 minutes of your precious time on this. I think the only complaint he has is that, like, it's just trash and it satisfies the male gaze. It completely brushes off the fact that all the workouts they do are actually accurate and promotes like a healthy thing. It's promoting weightlifting and making yourself feel better. I'm not watching this show myself, but I've heard plenty of good things, and people think it's funny and decent looking, and I don't know, I don't think it was very well justified, what you talked about. This is a gem. It's very pretty. This is about El Malloy Case Files, which is a spin-off of Fate series, which he didn't realize was a spin-off of the Fate series until after he watched it, and he admits to this in a video, but still keeps the segment in, completely trashing it, calling it, pretentious dribble. And he's like, and he literally just cuts to him recording himself being like, hey, I didn't know it was the Fate series. If you like Fate, go watch this. If like, that's probably why I didn't like it, because I didn't know Fate. No, dude. Like, I still value that. I think that's great, but you just said at the beginning of your video you're not watching these shows, and yet you include it anyway. Is it because you put all that time into recording and editing and then realized it's a spin-off of Fate? When did you realize this? And like, apparently he watched the wrong episode, and it's like, just start over. What are you doing? But he says, yeah, it's very pretty. If you want pretty, go look at pictures of the Grand Canyon. But the worst offender was when he did talked about Fire Force. Quote, I got about halfway through the first episode of this show, and then I got distracted because someone said the word for devil, and I was like, isn't that the same word they use for babies? And then I was like, they probably call babies that because it's also the word they use for red, and babies are red when they come out. And then my girlfriend thought that that phrasing was just hilarious, so we got into this conversation about babies, which eventually led to the semantic differences between uterine fluids and vaginal fluids in childbirth. And that got us on this whole thing, because babies are effing weird, man. They come out like shriveled and dented, and the doctor has to like shove their finger down their throats and clean out all the gunk so they can breathe human air. And let's not forget that meat tube they just have sticking out of them, giving them nutrients and stuff from their mother's nutrient supply, and we just have to cut that shit off with scissors. It's wild. Anyway, Fire Force is just a shonen with some pretty fire animation. If you can stomach Black Clover levels of shonen tropes, then go for it, I guess. Skip. I want to quote what the Neil Chop said about Little Dicky's Brain EP. I'm trying to enjoy this thing, but I can't figure out what angle to hit it at. Do I take what he's saying as serious? I can't, because what he's saying is stupid. Do I take what he's saying as a joke? I can't, because I don't think it's funny. The other not good video, not as bad, definitely not. I thought that was going to be the only one. Just came out today, actually. Scamboli Reviews came out with a video. Redline is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool title you got there. What's so bad about this video? It's a Redline video. What could he say? Redline's shit? No. If he did say it was shit, I would be fine with that, so long as he's giving good enough reasons. I know he's praising the hell out of it, but not a lot of distinct reasons. I guess it kind of felt like a Mal review, but you recorded it and put footage over it. It literally had like introduction, story, characters, animation, sound, final thoughts. And I thought we were past this, guys. Not, but I would have just put that, I just would have forgotten about it. If it wasn't for the really weird introduction where he tried to pitch this as, hey, anime's so hard to watch with your parents or to show to other people that don't get it. First of all, not true. It really just depends on what you show them. And second, why would you say this about Redline, which is like really over the top and cartoony? And see, I thought that would be a really interesting point of contrast, because not a lot of people, it's not a safe choice. Redline's not exactly a safe choice in my opinion. It's kind of Western, but it's still very over the top and anime-ish. And like, if you like this movie, you'll probably like Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust or anything Kawajiri made. It invokes a lot of those feelings, and a lot of 80s movies that are just like more style than substance, which are great. And I think that would have been a great angle, but he just kind of, I don't know, he just didn't know how to start it and just decided to go with that. It just kind of felt like that. It didn't feel like backed up. There was one interesting point of critique about the dub with Liam O'Brien. His voice, he says his voice was like grating and stuff and terrible. And like, and that was a good point. And he gave examples, and it was specific, and it gave point. It was interesting. That's the stuff I would have liked. I would have liked way more of that. But it felt very vague and generalized, like you kind of had to throw a video out it's clock's ticking, you have to get this video out. So come see, come saw. I wish that was better. He had a tangent. He had like a 20-second transition between story and characters where he's like, yo, babies are weird. Like exactly that. How does that happen? 2 videos in a week, and they're like, yo, babies are gross. But at least he says they're adorable later. Like, it's like, oh, what is up with, he's like, fun fact, babies don't have kneecaps. Oh, and they weird, and like, what? So there's a lot of baffling choices, and that's why I have it in this not good section. I didn't hate it or anything, but it's just like a lot of, what, dude? I'm going to talk about the videos that I thought were decent. Good, and I think could have been better. There's a point where I'm like, yeah, this is fine, but here's how you could make it like awesome, I think. So we have a Lost Pause video. Surprising. He's not like in the worst or anything like that. This is actually the first video I've watched in full, start to finish, from him. I've started plenty in, and I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. Sorry. Normally he just kind of reacts and laughs at funny jokes, at memes and stuff, and that's harmless, but it's just like, yeah, not worth my time. But the secret behind every popular seasonal anime waifu. I thought this was a very interesting observation, because yeah, every season we have the one girl, the best girl, and the community kind of rallies around her, and then the next season we move on to someone else. And I think that was an interesting topic to talk about, and he basically goes over various examples well, he goes over a lot. He basically tries to analyze the how, and not like the why, which I think is a little more interesting, but the how in terms of like, oh, they all act like this, or they all have this in common. And he gives a lot of like examples, mostly recent. The oldest example he gives is Rem from ReZero, and that's fair. But the style was inspired. It was kind of a mix of PewDiePie, where he was kind of semi-serious, semi-tongue-in-cheek tone, but also like Nakey Jakey a little bit, where he had the green screen behind him and he was able to move himself everywhere, and it made for very dynamic visual storytelling. I think it could have been a much better video, more concise, maybe strong, maybe better example, like more examples instead of referencing the same, oh, you're just referencing O202 again, or Reftalia again. It just felt kind of predictable after a while. Next one, the original End of Evangelion is a masterpiece by Kaze Talks. This guy's pretty new to the scene. And he's got a couple of videos, but this is the first that I've watched from him. And it was basically an argument for why the last 2 episodes of Evangelion are a masterpiece, in contrast to the movie, which he did not badmouth the movie at all. He actually kind of justified it, but he was also justifying why these 2 episodes are great on their own too. And I don't think anything he was saying was incorrect, and it was well presented, but it takes a long time kind of setting himself up, like, I gotta talk about plot. Here's what plot is, and he like rattles a lot of the like classic movies, and then like character arcs. Here's what a character arc is. But he makes this really good observation that I think it sounds good, but like that Western media, it's very clear who the good guy and the bad guy are. But in anime, there's a lot more gray area. The heroes have a lot more issues going on with them, and they're not as likable. And the bad guys have a lot more nuance to them. Like, oh, they're not, you can see their side even more. They're not as cartoonishly baddie. And that was a good point. And they have a kind of more grayness to them, and I like that. But unfortunately, what I was missing from it was actual analysis of the episodes themselves. I would have really liked a scene-by-scene kind of breakdown. Instead, he opted for the purpose of them and why they were like that, and explaining the whole series as and that's been done a couple of times, I think. It just felt kind of samey to a lot of Evangelion videos. But I hadn't seen a very specific episode 25, episode 26 breakdown scene by scene. And I think that would have been very interesting. And that's what I was hoping to get from this, but didn't quite get. He did do a scene, well, he did explain one scene, the one where Shinji's turning into various things and he shape-shifting pretty much. And he's giving thematic context and rationale for that moment as a part. And that was kind of going through his whole breakdown of what Shinji's representing. And you've heard it before. No offense to Kaze. I think it was a good video. Just something to think about for next time, maybe. But I liked it. Shout out to Kaze Talks. He's not very big. Not many of people know about him. He followed me on Twitter one day, and I followed him back and saw his channel. Yeah, decent stuff. Okay, and next is Oceaniz with Vinland Saga: The Power of Contrast. I'll admit I haven't seen a lot of Oceaniz's videos, at least for a while, since I first subbed to him, way back before he got like 1,000, I think. It was very early on, but he's since kind of exploded because he's like, oh, JoJo. And he's good, he's good at what he does. I've been watching his Twitter stuff, and I'm like, oh, he probably makes some pretty good videos. What he does essentially is define what contrast is, and it's like, it's not visual contrast here, but thematic contrast. I'm like, yeah, I kind of assumed as much. That's more interesting and probably up your alley, because you talk a lot about themes and characters and stuff. And he made this really great observation about the two it's obviously violence and pacifism. I think it's a little obvious for me. Even someone who has not read Vinland Saga at all, it was like, yeah, it's probably violence and pacifism, right? Like, okay. But it was a really interesting point that Vinland Saga starts with like brutal violence, like raw, unadulterated violence. And it's answered by the protagonist as intense pacifism. Like they react to the intense violence with intense pacifism, and that makes sense. And what that does is give rise to a arc of nuanced violence. Violence with a brain, you know what I mean? And still justifying on the side of violence, but like smarter about it. And that forced the pacifism side to evolve its argument to a more nuanced version of pacifism. It's a little more gray. The one thing I was upset about and why it's not in like the best videos for me, I was 4.5 minutes into your video and loving it. And here's what contrast is. It's thematic contrast. Here's violence. Here's violence depicted in Vinland Saga. And what is it contrasted to? It's the main theme of Vinland Saga. It's what it's all about. Pacifism. Spoiler warning. And just because you couldn't not talk about spoilers. And you don't give like a time card of when we can skip to later in the video. You're like, well, that's it. That's all I have for you. Right when you were about to get to the point, you know, right when you were about to say it. So for everyone like me who wasn't a Vinland Saga reader or an anime only, as you say, they just had to stop. And it's like, why? That's so deflating. That's robbing your content, especially with how good of a point you make later. Obviously I watched past it, got spoiled to two major events, both death related. And I figure there could have been a way to either briefly mention it into a spoiler section, but I could understand if you were like, I'm explaining where these come from, and to do that I have to say that these things happen. And it's like fair. I just would have figured out a way to kind of write around them, or just kind of, I don't know. That's a tough question, but it's like, say spoilers at the beginning of your video if you really have to. But like, I couldn't agree with putting spoiler warning 4.5 minutes in right as you're about to say your point. I just find that annoying and kind of a waste of time. I don't mind it because I'm just going to watch with spoilers or anything. And now I've been spoiled the Vinland Saga. I was going to read and watch it anyway, right? But others, just something to watch out for, something to think about next time. OTAQUEST. OTAQUEST has gotten much more active in the past couple of months. They were very quiet when they started. I learned about them from Canva Effect doing a video with them, and it seemed like to be kind of him associated with it. And I guess something happened, or some dropped out, or he's just not involved with it anymore because it's completely different people. And they just got way more active all of a sudden. Very interesting. And so this is the third or fourth video by these two dudes hosting it of sorts, and they basically kind of pose a question, kind of an innocent mainstream question, like, oh, why do anime characters get their hair cut off so often? And here, Anime Eyes and their insight on character traits just kind of talk about why their eyes so big, and just kind of talk about Anime Eyes. And I thought it was decent. I thought the hair one was much better. That was a couple weeks ago. And I thought it was better because they framed it as this really mainstream kind of acceptable hook. Whereas like we were watching Dr. Stone and this girl's hair gets cut off. And we're like, isn't that weird that they always get their hair cut off? I thought it was a great way to introduce your audience and hook your audience. And then it led to having a lot of insightful commentary. Here, the Anime Eyes, I just thought it was a little stiff, kind of rehearsed, like you had the note card, like you had like note cards and kind of going off of a prompter or something. It just didn't seem all that prepared. I just would have expected better. I think you can do better. But I think it was an interesting video, something to check out and something to keep an eye out for. OTAQUEST is getting more active, and I love lower attention guys getting more active and putting themselves out there. That's really exciting. They're gonna get a hit sometime. Ooh boy. Jeff uploaded 3 videos this week. I decided that the best entry of the 3 to talk about in this format would be his second Basement Life video, reincarnated as a what? JK Haru light novel review. It was a joint effort with Yazi and Jeff. Jeff is giving kind of all the credit to Yazi, but watching the video, it's much more of a half and half of Yazi and Jeff having this conversation about this light novel of being reincarnated as a sex worker in another world. And there's a funny bit in the middle where they totally shit on this one guy's negative review of it. That's very standard, like, this is all SJW, nah, nah. And it was very, very ironically funny. Like, yeah, I'd imagine there's a video like that. And I think she did a pretty good job. Both of them, really. That's just it. I really wanted to see Yazi take the helm on this. This is very much her kind of leaning on Jeff and him kind of propping her up and trying to do this herself. And I give her full credit for being the one to to incentivize this, as far as I'm aware. And I thought the subject matter was good, and she talked about it pretty thoroughly. And I also thought it was pretty engaging for just talking with a camera with no visuals, even though it's because it's a light novel. You don't have that many in the way of visuals, although I probably would have liked to see some in the way of visuals besides just the thumbnail. But yeah, I would very much like to see what she could do with a video. This reminds me very similar of Digibro and Pantsuit Party kind of making joint content. And she had this comment at one point that she's like, I've been in 200 videos, why can't I be recognized? And I'm like, you have your own channel. I'm subscribed to it. Make content. You're very good at it. And I can't wait to see more content from Pantsuit Party specifically, because I think she's very intelligent and funny and worthy of making content. She can hold her own against Digi, so of course she can make her own content. But doing it with him is not what I mean. And this is the same case here. I would have been cool if it was just her talking about it, even if it was off the cuff. I would have loved to see that with Yazi. Maybe she's not up for it just yet, and that's okay. I'm looking forward to when she is, and looking forward to more. I thought it was a pretty good video. Good job. Okay, and now for the best videos of the week. Holy crap. I am jealous of how good these videos are. That's so nice, dude. First, shout out. I will be very brief with this. Mr. Cynical with Finding Humanity in Ratatouille just uploaded today. Congratulations. Despite all the hardship you had to endure in uploading it. I thought it was very good. And it's not anime related, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. And I mean, what else is there to say? He kind of goes through a very standard step-by-step of the movie, but kind of justifying the whole movie as great and not just like only the last scene is good, which I've heard as an argument, and that's a very good point. I thought it was a great video. Okay, Beyond Ghibli. Of course he's here. Every video this dude makes. Oh, I didn't think he'd bite me. I didn't think he'd hook me this time. I am not a big Shinkai fan. I've seen some of his work. I have not seen Your Name yet. But gosh, this has given me the best convincing argument to watch it. Like, it was so thrilling. He kind of goes through his whole filmography and makes these observations like, you can tell this is a guy who cares about very particular things and is very passionate about what he wants to say. And he's an auteur, but he's not perfect. He's very, I liked that Beyond Ghibli didn't put him on this giant pedestal or anything like that. But you can't help but be excited every time this guy drops something new, because there's just so much potential and moments of brilliance. Next, Marion Bea. Ooh, 80s Magical Girls, a look at all Studio Perio's Magical Girls. So specific, so thorough, so detailed, so transparently, like, no rose-tinted glasses. You were very vocal about, like, this is problematic, this shit's dumb, and this part's really great, and here's why. I loved it. That was fantastic. I'm recommending this for anything in terms of Creamy Mommy, Magical Girl Emmy, everything you talked about. I would have preferred a few more title bars, like giving the name of the show at the bottom, just so that name kind of sticks in my head. Because, in all fairness, a lot of these shows kind of blended together. I remember Creamy Mommy, but and then one of them was called Emmy, but I don't remember the others. And it would have been nice if I had those names kind of there, personally. Other than that, go watch this video, please. It's wonderful. Next, KrisPNatz. I never really noticed there was a Chris and a P, and I just thought it was KrisPNatz or something, KrisPNatz. With a Kimono no Soja airing review. What? This show does not get talked about, first of all, at all, and second of all, by non-elitists. You know, because this is the show that's kind of more in an underground. A lot of the guys who are kind of off the beaten path watch this show, and that's how I know about it. But I've actually barely seen anyone talk about it online. And KrisPNatz covered it, and it was hilarious and really engaging. This guy, if you've not watched his content, it can be a little over the top and overbearing sometimes. It's a personality. And, you know, just like I find Explanation Point obnoxious, I don't find KrisPNatz all that obnoxious, because I think that there's just an infectious energy, and he's way funnier, dude. Like, it's just really charming humor that is not internet-y humor. It's just like really like sharp, kind of erotic, poppy mainstream, like really good. It's just so funny. He spoils the entire show. He actually summarizes it in like 3-4 minutes, most of the video. But it's just so engaging. Like you'd think that's so boring. It's 50 episodes, but it did not. When he finished, I was like, wait, did you just summarize all 50 episodes? Is that all of it? Whew, I did not. I didn't think it would be that spoilery. Holy shit. And it was great. And then at the end, he talked a little more in specifics and like made really interesting points. How it's like, it was really refreshing to have Western theology and Eastern theology kind of meshed together, and some Aztec influence, talking about the aesthetics of the show. Sort of a standard review, to be honest, but it's just the energy you brought to it and your charisma and humor. I loved it. I showed this to my friend. I'm like, dude, like, I don't show anime YouTube videos to my friends. And then I'm like, you know what? I need to watch this again because this was funny. Like, this was enjoyable. Like, awesome. And please do more of these. I loved it. Check them out. KrisPNatz. Great video. Craftsdwarf and Ember Reviews and Nunmanji and WatTheWut. All four of them put out Kyoto Animation OP analysis videos. What's actually in an OP? All of them obviously kind of ringleadered around WatTheWut. He's developed quite the community these days. But I thought your video was great on K-on's OPs, all three of them. And you made this really great point about stringing like past. Sorry, it was the first episode OP is very much about the future. The second one is more about the present, and the third one is kind of reflecting and kind of like the past and kind of reveling in the nostalgia and in the current, I guess. I don't know. That's not a very shit. I loved it. I swear it was good. I swear I watched it. I've only seen it once. I'm sorry. Craftsdwarf had a really great analysis. It was more about the lyrics in the OP than it was the OP itself, but it was a really great argument for Beyond the Boundary, which I have not heard that much argument for. So I thought it was really great. It makes me want to watch that show for sure. Ember Reviews taking a pretty standard crack, I would say, at the Haruhi Suzumiya OP, the first one, just the one of them. But for a long video analyzing one OP, yeah, makes sense. It was very thorough. Talked about lyrics and visuals, and really got to the point of the show. Very standard. It's kind of what you expect for a OP analysis, and I think you did a very good job at it. And Nunmanji, I have to say, I had not heard of this person before I saw this project, so it's great that this project exists. This is exactly exactly what they probably would have wanted. So I really enjoyed it. It was about Hyoka's 2 OPs, and he made a really good analysis, particularly of the second OP and kind of like what the first one's about, and the second one, getting a strong thematic understanding of Hyoka as a whole, which I admit I have not actually seen yet. Not just Hyoka, but like a really strong thematic argument for it in a cohesive video. There's been reviews saying it's good, and mentions here and there, and obviously Replay Value's giant series on Hyoka, but that's a giant video series that's huge, and you won't get the whole scope, I think. Maybe if there's one video that kind of consolidates all of it. But this was a really good argument for Hyoka too. And I think that's essentially what all 4 of these videos are essentially trying to do, is promoting these shows and really sharing the love for Kyoto Animation as they were going through this time. And I'm happy that they're still spreading it after all, like a month out. A lot of people kind of did their one video and kind of skedaddled. But these guys are sticking around for the long haul, and I really appreciate that. I think that was really admirable. And last, I've been putting this idea off for so long, and this is the video where I was like, yeah, it's time. I gotta talk about this one. Utaite Made Me Lose Faith in Anime by Suti Tooti. Suti Tooti has not made a video in a while, from what I remember. Not like a main video, from what I could tell. And probably a good reason for that may just be that, he's going through some emotional and kind of mental stuff. And he lays it all out in this video. It's not cynical. I mean, the beginning is kind of crude. It's very, like, self-aware and, like, memey and erotic in the way it's, like, just talking about masturbation and effort and, I don't know, that sort of thing. But he finally gets to the point, and when he does, he's like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. Utaite. And Utaite is, if you don't know, is these animations set to music, like kind of original animation, set to a very particular kind of music, maybe from certain artists and whatnot. And I've encountered several of these, being a weeb, but I never really put a name to it, and didn't realize there was so much more of it. And he doesn't really analyze it or like really try to make a justification of this is definitely better than anime, here's why. He makes an argument for why it's more valuable to him in this current moment of what he's going through mentally and what resonates in Utaite, but is not necessarily resonating in anime. And that's a really bold, vulnerable thing to make a video on, a public video on. I would not have the balls. And a really interesting point. And I thought it had a lot of passion to it, a lot of honesty. Doesn't shit on anime altogether. He's like, there are anime that I still think about and still consider are important to my life and my formation of my perception of the world. Gives plenty of examples. But he's like, I look at it right now and there's nothing out for me right now. And he's like, that's okay. And I'm like, that's okay. And like, that's awesome. Really great place to be. And I'm happy he seems to be in a much better position emotionally and mentally. But showing that vulnerability and kind of like how you can relate to that with what Utaite does, which is it boils down very much more to the idea and emotions of something rather than like the plot and like making a whole thing out of it. And I think it was a very good point because I agree. I've had powerful emotional responses to some of this Utaite because it elicits that reaction. I loved it, and I really wanted to make sure people knew about it instead of just a generic link to the video like, hey, watch this. I really wanted to make a video and be like, hey, that was really, really good. I'm happy you made it. I love anime YouTube, and then I love talking about it. And I hope you've enjoyed this very long video, either shitting on it, critiquing it, praising it, just realizing that it is an active community. We're not all bad. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Again, the playlist to all of these videos good and bad, good and not good, sorry, are down in the description. Please check them out. Thank you very much. Peace.